Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Franki's Open Mic. I'm your host, Haleigh Overseth of Franki's Podcast Network, joined by my co-host, Murray Angel, Murray Jackson of Love Reiki. Hey, Murray, thanks for being here. And we are excited today to have artist Rajul Shah here with us. We're so excited to speak with you about your art. She has been introduced to us by the lovely Siddhant of Vedika Art Studios and Gallery, who does represent Rajul and her beautiful art. And Murray, I will toss it over to you for just a moment to give Rajul a little bit of an introduction.
Perfect. Let me shimmer into the spotlight and get my mic ready. Today, everybody, we are joined by the incredible Rajul Shah. If you're unfamiliar, by the end of this space and time together today, you won't be. You'll be full of discovery, curiosity, and introspection. An inspired, abstract artist who works with bridging the worlds of healing, resilience, and transformation. Based between Singapore and the United States and many other places, Rajul is best known for her Kintsugi inspired mixed media paintings that explore the beauty of imperfection and the energy of the chakra system. Her art has been exhibited internationally from Tokyo to Florence and reflects a deep connection to both ancient wisdom and contemporary expression. We're honored to welcome her into this space, to have this conversation, and to explore the stories, the symbols, and the spirit behind her work that makes Rajul Shah, Rajul Shah. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Rajul, if we can start off, we do have this lovely intro that Murray just gave you, but tell the folks at home a little bit about these different sort of techniques and these different art of the. How did you get started in like energetic type abstract art and these different techniques that you use? Where did this sort of passion and curiosity first come from?
So I will digress just a bit to give you a little history on myself, because before I became an artist, I was actually in the healthcare space for 20 years. I worked on the marketing side in analytics. I worked in consulting for 5 years and then for Johnson & Johnson for 15 years. And I worked across a lot of different disease states. So that was my corporate life, my day job. At the same time, I was an avid practitioner of yoga. And being from India or being with the Indian culture, I knew that there was a benefit to having a daily, or in my case, it was like 2 or 3 times a week, yoga practice. I was noticing that when I was consistently practicing, that I was much healthier, less migraines, more relaxed, more energy, and all that other stuff. So I was very curious, like, I know there's a mind-body connection, but I wasn't quite sure how it all connected, because here on the medical side, I was reading, how does the liver work? How does the kidney work? How does your body work with insulin? And how does your brain work with mental health disease? How does a cell change into cancer? Like all of that I was reading scientifically, it made sense. But I'm like, I knew there was a connection, but I couldn't quite understand it. So then a friend of mine who also was a very spiritually oriented, or is a very spiritually oriented person, introduced me to this book. It's called The Anatomy of the Spirit, and it's by Dr. Carolyn Myss. And it was the first time that I finally understood how the energy flow in our body and our emotional and well-being and our mental fitness, so to speak, impacts our physical well-being or lack of it. And basically the book went through all 7 chakras. It even goes through some of the other spiritual religions and kind of goes through their basic tenets and linked it all together really nicely, and then went through each chakra to explain, okay, where is this located? How does it impact you if you have an adverse experience in your life? Where in your 7 chakras does that adverse experience hit you? And it might be a combination of a couple different chakras. And basically what happens is, as you may know, Marie, each chakra houses a bunch of energy that flows in up and down your body. And if the energy overflows in that particular area, then it's basically overflowing in the organs that are in that area of the body. So for example, your heart chakra, which is in your heart, that energy builds up and then it overflows into lungs, into the chest, and it's basically blocked, overflows, and it has to go somewhere. And so the theory is you can get sick. You get a cold, the flu, breast cancer, depending on how you've been able to process or not process the energy from that specific incident in your life or event. And as we know, for some of us, we are still processing events that happened in our childhood into our adulthood. So in any case, that was the book that kind of connected it all for me. And then I was even more of a believer in having a healthy, energetic flow, and keeping that healthy, and how you respond to adversity is the most important part, because you can't control what happens to you. You can control how you respond to it. So that was kind of my previous life. Alongside that, I always had a hobby of drawing and photography. Growing up, I read The Joy of Photography from like cover to cover, and I just loved it, all of it. And I was drawing, and I loved to, play around with paint, but I was also a vocalist growing up. I was a singer. I took the violin, I took the piano. So I always had a creative side to me. And I saw my first Monet painting when I was about, I would say 22, 23. And I was just mesmerized by the way he used color. I was going really close as far as they would let me. And then, going back, going close, going back. And I was just like, I have to learn how to paint. I just have to, because this is just how I felt in the moment that I saw his water lilies. I remember the painting, but I don't remember the name or the exact name of the painting, but it's like, I need to learn how to paint. So after my corporate life, we moved to Japan. My husband's job brought us to Japan in 2012. And I decided, I had 3 kids. One was in college. And I thought, okay, it's Japan. Perfect place to pick up art, see what my options are. While he's working and assimilating, I can figure out the art community and, study. So I applied to the Tokyo branch of the Temple University of the Arts in Japan, and I got accepted. But then I realized, between my sons being in high school in Tokyo, my daughter being in college, and then my husband working, I would have like 3 academic calendars I would be juggling as a mom.
And it's a lot just being a mom already.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know when we're all going to take the same vacation. So I decided that I would do continuing education classes as much as I can. And I would just seek out local masters in oil. There's Nihonga, which is a Japanese brush technique, the sumie Japanese brush. So that's what I did. I was in class like 5 days a week for, 2-3 years, always going over here to hone in on my drawing, learning oil painting over here, learning Nihonga over there, still going to photography, just because I wasn't sure which I was really loving. And then I fell in love with painting, and I fell in love with oil, and I fell in love with gouache and the watercolors. Then I learned acrylic over time, and I'm a very tactile person. So I love texture and I love touching. So whatever I paint, like I love to touch, and I love paper and, working. I've worked with pottery a couple times. It's something that I still want to learn how to do. But yeah, so I just got really inspired. At first, I was doing a lot of landscapes. I did a whole collection on Mount Fuji because Mount Fuji is a very iconic, not only is it an iconic landmark in Japan, but it also is almost considered a god in some ways, because Japan, being on volcanic ground, was built from volcanoes. And so Mount Fuji and the other volcanoes are what built Japan, but it's also what could destroy Japan. So there's a lot of reverence for Mount Fuji in Japan. So it was a kind of a sign of stability. So if you look at some of the Japanese art and Hokusai's woodblock prints, you'll see Mount Fuji in the background in a lot of them. He does a whole series. And it took me some time to figure out that, oh, you know what? You wake up during the day and you look at Mount Fuji and you're like, oh, good, we're still here. Everything's still good. It was like a sign of stability almost, and the reverence that the Japanese people had for it, I just came to understand and really respect. So I did a whole collection on landscapes around Mount Fuji that were inspired by Hokusai's work. And then I just fell in love with abstract over time. I just, when you study and you keep looking at different art, I fell in love with abstract. I fell in love with the whole Japanese art of Kintsugi. I really admired the way that in Japan, they have that wabi-sabi philosophy. They have a philosophy where over time, objects have spiritual connections to them. So you have a teacup that has served you for 20 years, right? Because you've drunk tea out of the same teacup. Well, it breaks. It deserves a place of respect in your home. So instead of throwing it out, they put it back together with gold splicing and tree sap, as an example. And then it's elevated into a work of art in the home. And you see where it broke, you see the seams, you see the scars, but it's also so beautiful because of the scars and the seams. So that philosophy I just loved. And during COVID, we were all kind of stuck, and I'm in the studio, and, I'm just thinking like all the things like climate change and, everything everyone was thinking about and was becoming concerned about. And I came up with this idea of the Kintsugi earth, thinking like, well, the earth can heal, like we can heal ourselves. Because one of the theories of climate change is with global warming, there will be bacteria and viruses that have been dormant because it's been colder. And as the climate warms up, these will become more prominent. And we're seeing that, right? Anyway, from a scientific standpoint. So I did this series called Kintsugi Earth and Kintsugi Ice. I applied it to like landscapes and stuff like that. And that series kind of sold out quickly. I think a lot of people could identify with that whole concept. And then in 2021, a friend of mine came down with triple negative breast cancer, stage 1. And she was a friend of mine from Tokyo. She was living in the US at the time. And I thought of the whole philosophy of Kintsugi, and I thought, wow, let me paint this for her as an inspiration, because she was going to go through a double mastectomy, to be on the safe side, which is, traumatic and nerve-wracking, right? And so I painted the figure of a woman with her breasts kintsugi'd back together with collage washi paper. I mean, just a beautiful rendition, you know, and
Mhm.
it's like, you're still beautiful, you know, you're still going to be beautiful as you recover from this. And then I launched into this series called the Kintsugi Body, which you'll find on the Vedika website if you go look. And so I did about 8 or 9 paintings in that series. I had worked in oncology when I was at J&J, so I had kind of an aspiration of, or how do I say this? A soft spot for that, you know, for one, just, I've never had it myself, thank God, but always conscientious of how it's impacting others when they have it in their families. So I did a whole series on the Kintsugi body, and I connected it to the chakras, because going back to that book, knowing that in each area of the body, your chakra energy will spill over and can have this negative impact. So as I was doing the Kintsugi body series, where I would paint the injury and repair it, it was that particular chakra's aura color that I would kind of surround the body with, or have some role in the painting. It was very purposely done. And then that's where the whole idea of doing chakras came from, and color fields using the aura color of the chakras. And so I started painting, you know, inspired by Rothko, because he was a major color field abstract artist, you know, still known for it. And the way other artists use color, like Klee, Klimt, Raza, who's an Indian artist, just studying how they all put color together, and then going through each aura and kind of just doing a painting on that color field with the gold kintsugi lines coming through. And the whole message is balancing your chakra, accepting your imperfections as a person, or accepting whatever the imperfect life events that have occurred, and realizing that some are more traumatic than others, not wanting to minimize what's happened to one person versus the other, but giving them a safe space to look at, where they can say, okay, this is my story, and I see my story in this painting. I see my story in this chakra, and understand how I can balance this chakra to help heal myself mentally and physically. And so what I truly wish is that a person will look at my painting, or the series of paintings, one by one, and just come away feeling less stressed, a little more hope, a little renewed, you know, have the chance to process a little bit more some of that negative energy that they're realizing from whatever is going on, and turn it into a positive manifestation of a goal or an affirmation that they want to take forward. So sorry, that was a very long way of answering your question.
That was a beautiful journey that you just took us on.
So intuitively led. Thank you so much for leaning into your deeper passion and your voice, your true voice. It's what we're here for today. I really like that, and I would just like to follow onto this for our audience, and for you too, Rajul. Like, I picked up a quote while I was taking some time over the last few days to really educate myself on your energy field and how you've arrived at being who you are. So I'd like to quote this quote of yours back to you now, because it really ties into everything that we've just said, and that deep reverence that the Japanese culture hold in the rise of the phoenix, and understanding that there's a shift always occurring, and how we choose to perceive that actually creates the magic of where we actually become and end up. And they've learned the magic in that, and you iterate that and speak on that so nicely. So the quote is, what needs repair does not need to define us. We can heal, regenerate, and evolve into improved versions of ourselves with renewed strength and purpose, just like the Japanese culture.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd really like to just go straight into this because you've really got me niggled on something, and it's got me. It's really got me. I would love for you to go a little bit further, just a little bit further into the expression of your hands when you get into that zone and the tactile experience of creating and paving that little pathway forward, that very first space.
So just about all my paintings, the first few layers are laid down with my hands in some way or another. And it's, for me, because from a personal standpoint, I've always had depression for like 30 years. And in more recent years, I've had anxiety, like really severe anxiety at times. And what I found, some of this came out of COVID in terms of the whole anxiety part. But what I found is working with my hands really soothed me. And so the first few layers of my paintings, I'll do circular motions, which is what you see under the texture in a lot of my work. I will lay down texture with my hands in circular motions, like molding paste or just the thicker gel with color and things like that. And you'll see that on my Instagram if you look at some of my videos. I personally find that very soothing. I find touching texture and moving my hands over it very soothing, whether it's a rug or a paper or anything. So, and those first few layers for me kind of represent the grittiness of life itself. Like, daily life is full of little annoyances, 10 red lights and you're 15 minutes late to your destination, or, you had a fight with your sibling, or, a fight with your parent, or anything, right? Like, life is just not perfect for any of us. So this was my way of kind of processing my grittiness. And I also like to think I'm infusing positive energy into the painting while I'm doing that, because it's very meditative for me. And I'm looking at the colors that I kind of want to kind of choose. And so that's like the first few layers of the painting. And sometimes I'll do an entire painting with my hands, just kind of laying down color and glaze and layers and layers. And then as I do the top layers, they become more smooth. They're less, there's less texture, but you can still see the texture coming through. And so the whole symbolism is, as the layers get smoother and the color gets a little bit more even in places, that's the whole process that we take on of, how do we come out of whatever it is, whether we've had a hard day or we've had the loss, or we're grieving a loved one, or we've had some other trauma. It's layer by layer. There's no big one-all solution. So there's no thick healing layer we can put on it. We just have to go through the fire. We have to go through the process of building ourselves back up layer by layer and having the patience to do that, right? Because everything takes time. And so the energy and the chakra is the same for me. And, if you go back to basic physics that we all learned in high school about atoms and how everything is made up of atoms, it's a matter of, the structure being more dense or less dense, right? Like water is made up of atoms, rocks are made up of atoms, but over time, water still erodes stone as it's going through a river or something. And so if you really believe all that, then energy is free flowing. It's in our breath. It's in whatever, it's in the wind that we take in. It's in the sound that we take in at a concert. And so how you take that energy in and how you give it back out is crucial. And so I'm a firm believer in exchanging positive energy as much as possible. Now, I mean, we're all human at the end of the day, you know, we're like still gonna curse out the guy who cut us off, right? Like in a small way, you know.
And
not
that's
a big,
valid. We've all been there.
we all
Really
have
valid.
that. Like, oh crap, I burned the stew or something like that.
Many do.
Like that all happens, but then it's the recovery. You're just kind of like, okay, he cut me. He's probably in a hurry. Just let him go, right? Like that kind of recovery. Or okay, I burned the stew. I can order in. It's not a disaster. You know, don't cry over spilt milk. All that stuff. So, yeah. So my whole philosophy is just that with my art. And how I interact with people, you know, kindness. And I try to teach my children this as well. Like, it all matters. Literally, it all matters. So, yeah. And thanks to the rise of social media and reels on Instagram, it's like I'm learning a lot more about some of these experiments that are being conducted on energy science. So things like, I don't know if you've probably seen the experiment, I think it was Japan, where they did it on 2 jars of white rice. And the 1 jar of white rice, they only spoke positive things to for days. And the other jar of white rice, they only said negative things to. And at the end of the month or the week, the jar they said negative things to was actually black and moldy, while the jar with the white rice was still white.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, again, going back to that whole idea, in Japan, they believe in forest bathing. They call it Shinrokyu. And they've done clinical studies where literally if you walk through a park, which they have a very special design for parks as well, you walk through a park or you forest bathe, your blood pressure will decrease by 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are always parks everywhere full of water, koi, greenery, flowers. They celebrate the seasons. And so there's a big belief that bathing yourself in nature's energy and exchanging that is healing. So when you take all of that together and then you take what ancient wisdom was already there, not just with India and yoga and the mind-body connection, but you look at other things like Tai Chi, which is manipulating the energy field around your body. It's like, it's really hard not to believe this for me.
Oh, you don't have to convince us at all. We're full on, like, we're all in on all of it. You know, Marie is a Reiki
Common
master.
title is
And
woo woo. We recognize woo woo.
we recognize woo-woo to be like absolutely truth and reality. So we appreciate the energy that you put into your work and how much you really do believe in the energy and the passion behind what you do. Because it's very, I do abstract art myself, so I'm full on with you. I do like the oil pastels and I love the tactileness of it. And like just the smooshiness. It's like playing with lipstick when I was a kid. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I do love that you have such an ease of speaking with this, even though you come from a very scientific and medical background, right? This is something that I think a lot of people would not necessarily expect of someone who speaks the way that you do, someone who understands energy the way that you do, incorporates that energy into your art. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, has there been a bit of a journey for you in maybe the perception that others might have from what I'm thinking of is just the way that we as humans are a bit trained to take on what's told to us or full on reject it. Whereas you have really beautifully blended these things together, your medical background, the scientific background, and this energy work and these things that are creative and artistic, right? Like you have seamlessly put these things together. Is this something in your journey that you've had any kind of challenges with getting others to understand that perspective when it comes to kind of both sides that you might sort of play in?
You know, I mean, we all have a story, right? Like everyone has things in life that has helped shape them in terms of adversity. And even the good stuff brings stress, right? It's positive, like a wedding. It's positive and it's great, but it's still one of the most stressful things you'll go through in your life next. And it's so some of it, interestingly, I think my observation of the medical field is there is this branch or a belief with a lot of physicians that there is this connection, because the more research we do on the brain, the more we're finding about how the brain fires neurons into the rest of the body. Epilepsy, for example, it's a misfiring of neurons in the brain. There is a science to how energy in the brain commands the rest of the body. I think for me, I also had my own story and journey from childhood into adulthood. And I was always, between having, I was born in India, raised in the US. My parents, very traditional, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but I kind of had two lives. Like during the day, I was completely Western, going to school, and then coming home, it was completely Indian culture. And, we had our religious groupings and ceremonies for Diwali and all of that, but they were always kind of separate from the rest of our main day. And back then that was the way it was fine. You just did it. You just assimilated that way. But, people, I mean, people didn't understand where I came from in school. I was one of 3 Indians in my high school. So I think at one point I was told, you should go back to Africa. And I was like, I think you should go back to geography class.
Right? I think you should go back there and get a globe.
Yeah. But, but then that's like one of the moments in my life I realized, like, they just don't know. Like, so it kind of dissolved any anger I had, because I'm like, they don't know. So I can't blame them for not knowing, because nobody taught them. Right. So I'm like, look, this is where India is on the map. This is where Africa is. And here's where we are. So please I'll go back to India. I do. But, I want you to know that it's not the same.
But this is where it is, right? Like, allow me to enlighten you while I absorb your negative energy.
Well, I mean, and the truth is, when you look back, like, it's a whole host of things go on, right? When there's like discrimination and stuff, and to take it apart is a whole other few podcasts. But rest assured, I just felt compassion at that point. Like, all right, it's not really a personal thing, and I should just not take it like that, and I processed where that hit me, right? And I became calmer for it. So throughout my life, of course, as many people, we all had our incidents and how it's impacted us. And I process my art in that way. So I think when I explain to my old colleagues, I see them embracing it, to be honest, whether it's of the color that attracts them to the artwork or it's the philosophy behind it, they embrace it. And whatever the window or the door is that makes you come in to look at the painting and stay with it is great. And then because unconsciously you're going to come out of it feeling a little bit better. I had a client. That's cool. She was a professor at Duke in neuroscience, and she bought one of my paintings, and then she sent me a photo of a microscopic photo of what they were studying in the brain. And if you look at it, she's like, it looks like the Kintsugi lines that are in your painting, like exactly like that. And I was like, that's so cool, because I'd never really seen that. But for me, it was just affirmation, like even nature has given us the method in which we can process and repair. Like, to me, that was incredible. And then I had, in my Kintsugi Earth series, I did a painting called the Kintsugi Sun. And it's a small, some of my main paintings are just small pieces. And there was this woman out of California that wrote me on Instagram saying that she meditates on this piece every day. Because she's a sexual abuse survivor, and that it brings her peace. And for me, that was just like, that's what I want. It helps her to introspect. So I ended up gifting that painting to her, because like I knew she was telling the truth, and I just felt like you should have it. If it brings you that much comfort, then it belongs with you. So, and it was a small painting, so it wasn't much for me to just send it, right? But yeah, so I'm finding more and more that people are responding to not only the philosophy of Kintsugi, but the energy systems in our bodies. And with the rise of the Reiki practice, I think, and rise in the practice of yoga and embracing some of the Eastern ways of manipulating energy and the energy field around your body, I see it rising, which is a great thing, right? Hope that answered your question. Sorry. And if I'm talking too much, you just have to let me know, because I can talk.
This beautiful experience is a place of evolution, and you really do hone in on that and remind the audience that by just taking a moment to take a step back from whatever it is that's in your immediate space, you do broaden your perspective, and you actually allow yourself the degree of having a perception shift. And it's in that very, very act, through our own free will, no thanks to anybody else, that we get to arrive at these next layers of incremental experience, which, like you said, are layers, and they're felt. We feel our way through them. As humans, we just constantly have to come back to this place. We can understand things so much into a theoretical, analytical point, and it can be a belief. But until we've felt something and truly felt into it, it'll never really deeply resonate with us completely.
Yeah, I think the physical manifestation of stress, if you ask someone, okay, where do you feel the grief? Where in your body is it being felt? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your heart, in your head, all over? And then they answer you and you're like, well, that's where your energy's blocked. And if there wasn't that connection, you wouldn't feel that. Like, if you didn't have the energy flowing, you wouldn't believe that, right? You wouldn't feel that physically. So just that one bit alone, when I'm talking to people who might not believe in the whole energy science part or the energy healing part, once I say that to them, they're like, oh, yeah, that's why you feel anxiety in your stomach. That's why you don't feel like eating when you're nervous, because it impacts your personal empowerment, which is your third chakra. It's just, it's interesting in that sense when you just kind of take them one step further.
I do have a question that's coming up for me here. It's very intuitive, so this is deeply from the soul. I'd like to ask you, when you arrive in these spaces like we did earlier, being a human being, we carry many emotions, as you've expressed here today, and sometimes arriving in these spaces, especially after navigating a lifetime and a pathway of depression, I'd like to ask you, when you arrive to these spaces to create, and sometimes you may not be in the best state of being, what kind of practices and steps do you take prior to commencing and engaging with your material and your co-creation? And if so, and when, do you infuse the energy and transmute it while in motion, or do you step back from these and take other measures in place?
So I practice yoga at least 2-3 times a week. And I always light a candle when I'm up in my studio, and I take the time to kind of smell the fragrance of it. I take some deep breaths, and honestly, I just get into the action of it. I mean, I do put on music or something because my left brain needs to be occupied so that my right brain can actually, do its thing. But to be honest, this very motion is what soothes me. Touching paper, touching my paintings is what soothes me. Touching wood and just kind of, even my hands, just focusing on the touch part and feeling the ridges and taking that 2-3 minutes for just mindfulness and focus. I actually do that several times a day, daily. And that helps me stay in a positive space. And then the painting itself. I mean, there are artists who will they have their routine and they have their, their prep. I'm a little more spontaneous. I just go with what I'm feeling in the moment. So if I need to have a warm up, then I'll do a small warm up. If I don't, I just get right to the surface, because the way I leave my studio is my work, my painting, and then the paints, I'm like ready for the next layer as soon as I get up there, because I kind of like, okay, I need these colors for what I need to do next. So everything's out and ready for me to just dive in. So there's minimal prep time for me. I can just kind of get into whatever action I need to take, and I can just get into the zone I need to get into. Did that answer your question? Oh, good.
Haleigh, your volume seems to be not present with us.
I think you're on mute.
I think you've muted yourself. And you've done a good job of it. I'll take off here while Haleigh comes back in, and I will say, it's so easy to be analytical. I need to finish this, or if I start this, when am I going to have the result, or how do I go into this space if I'm not ready in that? But you speak of that act of being in flow. That is very special and very, very unheard of throughout our society. We do have flow, but our perception of what real flow is against controlled flow is definitely indoctrinated and conditioned. And so when we think we're in flow, we're really just in a state of survival. And the way you allow yourself to arrive and assess that energy moment to moment, it actually really does reedify the fact of your empathy, and that being the superpower here at present that drives you forward in your co-creation, because you don't skip that step. And through that step, it allows you to then become deeply soulfully entrenched.
Yeah.
And that's really big. And I think a lot of artists, contemporary artists, including Haleigh, that are finding their way in the niche and the world, and myself just breaking out into art recently in the last few months, I understand that ebb and flow now. I'm learning and leaning into that. And I thank you for sharing that, because it is really important that we don't arrive to a space with an expectation unless it's already arrived there for us and we're just doing the service. So thank you very much for sharing that.
I mean, one of the things that I find, so I'll just give you, I was in New York for an art fair at the end of April, and between jet lag and just being on my feet for 4 days, I was so exhausted. And I just couldn't make it up to the studio. So for 2 days, I napped and I vegged and I watched Netflix, Friends. I just kind of gave myself the break, because my energy was just not, it was like, no, we're not ready for this yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a group show coming up next week. So I'm like, I had to create 2 small paintings for that because it has its own theme. But I also was like, okay, just get through these couple of days. You'll find your way back, and it's really about being in tune with your own energy. And I know, there's a group of people to which that sounds really kitschy or dorky, but it's really true. I mean, just being aware of, okay, what is your body saying to you today? It's telling me that it's exhausted, it's jet lagged. You're not going to paint well if you get up there. You are not going to create. And then I did 2 days. Then it was like, okay, let's go up, but we're not ready to do serious stuff yet. Let's just do some experimenting. So I'm like, oh, I've always wanted to try out how, if I combine this medium with this, or that, what happens. And so I did 2 days of experimentation.
Very cool.
And then I got back into the painting and I finished it in like half a day. So
that's awesome.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I don't know if my sound is back yet.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
Here
with
we go.
us.
Awesome.
Woohoo! Great to have
Beautiful.
you back. Thanks for joining.
No, I really do love that you're sharing this flow that you get into, because I think that it's precisely why I enjoy abstract art, because you don't have you're not trying to replicate an image external to you. You are in the moment, finding the flow of what it is. You're flowing with the energy of your hands, of the paint, of the color, of your visual. You're fully immersed in that presence with your sensory experience that you're having. And I do think that it in itself is a meditative practice, and it does generate that healing energy for you as like you're speaking about, as you move through it. It helps you to process energy as you're going through those motions and experiencing all of that sensory. So I really do appreciate you sharing that. I think it's such a beautiful thing to, through your example, to encourage people to get into that creativity within themselves and to tune into that intuition that says, now is not the time for this. Give yourself rest. Okay, now go. There's so much of what you're talking about, I think, that is essentially the things that we try to example to people or speak about in podcasts so frequently, is this flow state, the benefit of it, and how getting with yourself and knowing when to create and not forcing yourself to create. Because that's something I think that creators can, especially in the age of social media and kind of keeping up with the trends, right? People have a tendency to allow themselves to get into that energy of, I need to get something out, so I think it's a beautiful thing that you follow your intuition and example that forcing yourself into it is not a space that is going to benefit you. And I think that's a beautiful message, along with all the other beautiful messages that you have. I am so glad that we have you here to share all of this. I really appreciate all the messages in everything that you're speaking. I can't say enough about how very connected to your energy and the perspectives you have. I really do feel and resonate with. I think it's such a beautiful thing that you've shared this journey with us, because it does, I think, speak to where a lot of people find themselves in the moment right now. Mary Angel, I think that I can sense that you have a thought to piggyback off there.
I think there is a space where a lot of artists I know have this routine they go through daily, right? And I actually admire them for being able to stick to it, but I've never been able to do, like, there are artists, like, they're okay, I go for my walk in the morning, come back, shower, have my coffee, up in the studio for 3 hours, and I'm just, in corporate life, I had to do it that way because that's, very structured, but I've never been able to do that as an artist. And to be honest, I would really beat myself up for that for a while, because I was like, why can't I? But then I realized, like, I'm not creating good work when I force myself to do that, or if I force myself to finish something for a specific deadline. And I need to trust myself to say, like, okay, you'll finish it and it'll be done by that deadline, but you need to go through what your body's telling you need to go through first to get all the junk out. And you just figure out, like, this is my way of getting the junk out, so that I'm free to create. But everyone has their process, right? And then for me, that's 85% of the painting, is that whole being in the zone, doing that. And then you come to this part where it's like, okay, I can't really do much more to this. But then you learn how to critique your own work, right? Like, you want to critique it for things that are technically considered good, part of high quality, or a piece of great art. So it's like, you look at it for eye choreography, for the compositional balance, for the balance between chroma and non-chroma, between values and stuff. So that's the part that takes me a bit longer, because I'm always questioning myself second, third, fourth times.
No need to. You're in the flow, and everything you're doing is absolutely perfect. And we just love that you came here on Franki's Open Mic to share it with us. I love your energy. I love everything that you're saying about your art. I really, as an artist myself, do really resonate with the process that you're speaking about. And I'm that way too. I came from corporate kind of background, and I can't infuse that into my creativity, try though I might. And I am in that space now of just, well, maybe that's just my process, and if it doesn't look like everyone else's, it's because it's not their process, it's mine.
Right. Yeah. I'm so grateful for being here. I really, really thank you so much. It's always, I find that for people who don't know about Kintsugi, and if they don't know about chakras, it's always hard to, there's no way to explain that to them in like 2 minutes or 5 minutes. Do your best. But I really am grateful. Thank you for allowing me to really explain and go through all of that, and helping me to explain and go through all that.
Thank you. Thank you for filling this space with your emittance of light that you do so freely and so willingly in service. Thank you for taking us on a journey of your expedition from being a human as a child into a corporate leader, strapped in, doing the best, doing the most, to converting that energy into a state of flow and finding your true state of being. In a world of being and becoming, the lines between two get very blurred. So thank you for being here with us today, providing the experience, the insight, and the wisdom from your spirit and your perspective through your experience on how to balance this and stay in flow. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Have a
Rajul. No, we loved having you. We're going to have you back. I feel like we could have so many conversations about energy and art. So you're going to have, guess what? My lasso's coming out, and I'm going to rope you on back in for some more playtime, because we need more Rajul here in our energy space. Absolutely.
As much as you want. What I would love to do is go through each chakra. And I mean, if you read this book, it's just, you'll see what I mean. There's so much content, and there's so much to absorb, and I'm still absorbing it. So thank you. I would love to come back and talk with you all. I really appreciate it.
I feel like,
get the lasso.
I know. I was going to say, I feel like there's a whole energy series coming to life here that we have, like, I feel it brewing. I'm excited here.
Awesome.
Everyone, like, thank you so much for watching, everyone. And whenever you do find this, do check out Rajul. We have all of her links in the description for all of her socials, her website. Check out her art. Do check out Franki's Podcast Network for all the other awesome podcasts that we have going on there. Thank you so much for being with us. Murray Angel, thank you for co-hosting.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Franki.
I have had the best time here. Rajul, thank you again for joining us, and I can't wait to have you back again.
Hey, thank you.